good evening. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for answering. Thank you all for coming out tonight as we, a year after his passing, we remember our friend Jim Miceli. While we all feel the loss of this great man, this is not necessarily a solemn occasion. We are looking to celebrate the life and legacy of the man that we knew and loved so well, James R. Miceli, our former state representative. We're about to hear some stories about the late state representative from the people who knew him best. Our panelists tonight will discuss his life, his work, and his impact on the Wilmington and Tewksbury communities. Our panel includes Margaret Wilson, longtime legislative aide to the rep, Liz Carey, longtime friend and wife of Jim's longtime campaign manager, Warren Carey, Jay Tighe, longtime friend, and Jay Kelly, longtime friend. These people represent both Wilmington and Tewksbury. My name is Steve Bjork. I'll be your moderator for the evening. And I'd like to express a thank you to Tewksbury's telemedia for filming tonight's event. This event is a collaboration between the Wilmington Memorial Library and the Tewksbury Public Library with the support, there's a heavy P's on this microphone, with the support of Wilmington Historical Commission and the Tewksbury Historical Society. And special thank you, of course, to the members of Jim Miceli's family who were able to join us tonight. So we're going to start with some questions to our panelists. I will just start by saying that the first time I met Jim Miceli, I was a student at the Woburn Street School, and we had a 5th grade field trip to the State House. And Jim never, ever forgot how important it was to educate the young people about civics and their duties to become active in their communities. And I'll never forget, as a 5th grade student, meeting Jim Miceli for the first time. I was in 5th grade, I was 18, but I was in 5th grade. And interestingly enough, just last year, one of my sons attended that very same field trip. 2 years before that, my daughter, and my oldest son, several years before that. Jim did it every single year, and I think that was just such a fantastic thing that he did. In Wilmington, we have an award that we give out each year called the Good Guy Award, and it goes to somebody who goes over and above what is considered the call of duty for them. They participate in the town community events, and they help a great deal. I've been the host of that, the MC of that event for many years. Before me, the host was a gentleman named Harry Cunningham, and Harry and Jim were very, very close friends for many, many years. And one of my favorite Jim stories that Harry and I still kind of laugh about today, and we shared this with Jim. One day, I happened to see Jim, and he said, "Oh, somebody doesn't like my routine." Crickets are going off. That's good. All right. I saw Jim, and Jim was saying, I love the Good Guy Award. I love the way you MC it. You're the funniest guy that's ever done it. Keep up the good work. I really think it's fantastic. One day, I was at Harry Cunningham's house, some day after that, and his granddaughter happened to come in. She says, I just saw Representative Miceli, and he was telling me how you were the best, Grandpa, were the best good guy MC ever, and that nobody's ever been able to do it as well since. So me and Harry thought that was very, very funny, and we shared it with Jim, and he thought it was funny too. So with that, I will start posing some questions to our panelists, and we'll start in order with Margaret. Margaret, how long did you know Jim, and how did you and Jim first meet?
Well, I met Jim back in 1984 when I started going out with his then administrative aide, Richard Wilson. Richard actually was with him already for a few years in the State House, and we were both traveling the train together. And 1985, we got married at our backyard, and Jim and Jean attended our wedding. It was pretty cool. A couple of months after that, there was the treasurer of the re-election committee, Gordon Hayward, wanted to retire, and he asked me if I wanted to be treasurer of his re-election committee. I said, oh sure, what do I know of that? So I started doing that back in 1986 and continued to do that until 2007, I was his committee treasurer. Richard stayed with Jim until 1999, and unfortunately he passed away in 2001. And in 2007, Jim asked me to come work at the State House with him, full-time aide, and I was his administrative aide and chief of staff for several years until 2014. And then I left in 2014. I decided to retire. And so I think I counted like 29 or 30 years that I knew Jim.
Very good. Liz Carey, same question. How did you first meet Jim, and how long have you known him?
Okay, I've known Jim for about 38 years. 27 as town clerk. And I thought, ooh, this is going to be a little scary. I'm the town clerk, and Jim is my good friends, and he's going to be coming in looking for nomination papers he got from Wilmington, but various reports about the election. It worked out well. He never asked for anything, and he paid for everything. And the one thing he would say to me, make sure you give me your receipt. So he was such a good person and so fair. And then after I retired as town clerk, we became better friends for the next 11 years. And it was fun knowing him, because he was so, rambunctious and wanted to get the job done, and where are we going from here? And it was amazing of his accomplishments. And I'm so proud to have this moment to be with him at the time, kind of both of us growing up. And of course, Warren, his best friend, and we'll get into that a little later. They just had, and Jay, they just had this combination of the three of them. I used to call them the three amigos, but they were fun people. Jay?
That's bullshit.
How did you first meet Jim, and how long have you known him?
I've known, well, like 57 years when he first came to Wilmington, and he wound up going on the planning board. He served on the planning board, then he became a selectman, and then state rep. But I just couldn't believe the energy that he has. I mean, I used to go out for like the campaign on a Saturday and Sunday, and this would be when he didn't have anyone running against him. He'd be out there campaigning and say, "Who's running against you? Why are you doing this?" But I think the key to him was his wife. If he didn't average 5 nights a week out at different events, supporting people, I don't know how she did it. And in spite of that, they raised 3 beautiful children, of which the daughter Hope is here right now. So he was just an amazing man. Thank you.
Thank you. I met Jim in 1976, so that was 43 years ago. That was during his first campaign in the combined district. I was on the finance committee then, and he asked me to support him during that run. I had to tell him that his opponent, Frank Antonelli, and I had been friends since the 50s. So I was going to be supporting Frank in that campaign. Jim understood loyalty, so there was no problem with my saying that to him. But I have to tell you, that was the first and last time I didn't support Jim for anything.
All right, why don't we, I was going to say, why don't we keep the microphone, why don't we start with Liz for this next question? How would you describe Jim in just a few sentences?
I think I need more than a few sentences, but I'll try. Jim was passionate. He He loved what he was doing. He loved seeing all of you. If he was here, he'd be bubbling around talking to everyone. What do you need? He was wise. He was skilled. He was respected. And he was a people person. And I think we're all here because we know him. And we really respected him and what he did for all of us and for our town, Wilmington included. I'm not going to let Wilmington out the door.
I'll get 2 sentences. Jim was a good guy who used his intelligence, his experience, and his energy to help people who needed help, and he loved doing it.
He was also very tough, and this politics is a contact sport, and boy, no one got the best of him. He was really tough. I can remember when he first ran, and they had done redistricting, because Wilmington used to be part of Reading, and we had a representative named Frank Tanner who was good, and then they divided it up, and Jim wound up running against Fred Kane. And in those days, Jim was a Republican, and he was excited running against him because we had North Woodham was part of the district, and it was heavily populated by people of the Italians. So he figured, boy, I'm all set. And he often told me, he says, you know, I'd get down there and I'd talk to him, and they'd say, Jim, we love you, but you're a Republican. We can't vote for you. And he wound up losing a couple of times to Fred Kane by like 500 votes. And then in his third attempt, he won, and he did it for 42 years. And boy, he was good. He was good.
Speaking of contact sports.
Nah, we all love Jim. He was bigger than life. He was someone you met just once in your lifetime. I mean, he had a presence about him that, regardless of his size, he was fearless, he was determined, he was tenacious. He never took no for an answer. Never, believe me. And he loved living life big with gusto. He just went for it, and it was exciting to watch him.
All right, let's start with Jay Tighe in this next one. What do you think Jim valued most in life, and why? What do you think Jim valued most in life, and why?
Well, as much as he loved politics, I think his family came first. Absolutely. And unfortunately, his wife isn't here tonight, but she's the rock. And boy, I'll tell you, putting up with his schedule had to be brutal. So I think a lot of credit should go to her. She is quite a woman.
I agree with Jay. His family was his top priority. He made an effort to keep them out of the line of fire when he was subject to political attacks. This happened many times over the years, and he did a good job of that. He had his priorities straight: family, faith, friends, and he stuck to that.
Liz, the question is, what do you think that Jim valued most in life, and why?
Jean. She was first.
I don't think you have to explain why.
She was there for him. She was his backbone, believe me. She was wonderful. His wonderful family. His close friends that you could call on to rely on. His faith. His staff. Valued his staff. And his constituents, you people. valued you. He wanted to do everything that he could do that would make everyone's life in both our towns better.
Again, his family was first. He would always bragged about his kids, about his grandchildren, their accomplishments. It was the biggest part of his life. He was so proud of them. And second was loyalty. He loved his friends, but he loved that they were loyal to him. You did not want to make an enemy of Jim Miceli. He did not forget anything. But like I said, he did not forget anything.
All right, I think we'll start with Jay Kelly on this next one, and I think Liz and Margaret, I think you touched on this a bit, but what made Jim such a popular and effective politician?
Well, what made him popular were two things. First, his political philosophy was that of the moderate Democrat of 40 years ago. That's no longer the case. But it closely matches the voters of the town now, both towns now, Democrats and Republicans. And second, when any one of us had a problem with the state bureaucracy, we all knew that we could count on Jim to help us. What made him effective was he knew which buttons to push to get that bureaucracy to move. He told me once that the secret of moving the bureaucracy was to start at the top when you're pushing buttons.
All right. Jay, you passing on this one?
Yeah, I'll pass on that.
Jim was a good listener. He valued everything people had to say to him. He kept that with him. I remember one time I was at the town clerk's office, and Jim came in for a little visit, and we're talking out in the kind of the hallway, and two people come in and, oh, hi, Jim, hi, you know, and he left me to go talk to them, which is fine, because that's what I always wanted with Jim. He was a good listener, and he was going to listen to their couple's problem and see if he could help them out. And that's what I loved about this guy. You know, we knew who Jim was. We didn't have to ask any special favors of him. He was just a regular, ordinary guy that was there for all of us.
With Jim, it was his personal touch. He was always connecting with people. People knew that they could call him at any hour of the night, day and night. I don't know if he ever slept, to be perfectly honest, because he was always calling people back, even in the middle of the night. I know some people would get his call. But it didn't matter to him. He just wanted to connect with his people. Again, in the State House, it was citations. Is there anybody here that has brought a citation from Jim Miceli? No. We got them by the hundreds to the supply office, and they were wondering where they all went. He wanted everybody to have them for any reason. For graduations, for weddings, for the field trips. When the kids came in on the field trips, they all got citations. The youth groups, the Eagle Scouts, we were at all of these events. He loved going to them. He loved when the kids came to the State House. He loved showing off the State House, the beautiful house that it was, and introducing them to the history of the place. Again, he attended everything he could. He was just at everything. It was a personal touch. He did not let anything slide. And again, he didn't want to change the world. He just wanted to help those constituents that would come to him for help. And of course, people would, because they could not get through the bureaucracy, or they just knew that Jim would help.
I'm just going to, if I could just piggyback on something you mentioned about him being available all the time, night and day. And years ago when I used to work for the newspaper, I had a question, and we were going to press the next morning. And I didn't call him. And he got very upset at me. I said, Jim, I didn't know I needed this until midnight. He goes, I was awake. You got to call me. So one time I called him on that. It was probably almost 2 in the morning. I called him and he picked right up and goes, Steve, what can I do for you? It was unbelievable. I don't know if he ever slept.
Yeah, there's a night he told me once. We do those on.
I just got in under the wire then, huh? All right. Liz, what do you think are some of the accomplishments that Jim was most proud of as a politician? I mean, certainly we know about the personal accomplishments with his family, but as a politician, what would you think?
This library, he secured the land from the state to build this library here. And I can't remember what it cost, but this was a good deal for the town of Tewksbury, that he got this library for us. And the land, because it belonged to the Tewksbury Hospital, wasn't the town of Tewksbury's property. And he was able to secure that for us. And the other thing, he was always the police department, the fire department, anything they needed, he would ask them, he would try to get them funding for whatever they needed, fire engines. The school, he supported the school programs. Some of the land he got from, I think it was the North Street. Am I right, Jay? The North Street, he got some land for that school? Behind the North Street, yes. And, I mean, these are big accomplishments. Some of the reps and the senators, they don't even know where to begin. He was so aggressive, trying to meet our needs, which was so wonderful for the town of Tewksbury and Wilmington, because he also helped out for a few of the Wilmington schools. He just was so aggressive to do this for his constituents, for us, because he knew we needed the help.
Well, it was said that to a reporter somewhere along the line, that just take a ride down Route 38, and you can see where his hand was in everything down this road. The bridges, the roads, the sports fields, the library, the police station, the schools. If it needed money, they knew that they could come to Jim, and Jim would fight for every penny he could get for them.
Jay, same question. What's some of his political accomplishments you think he'd be most proud of?
He did so much in Wilmington too. They had a couple of bad oil spills at the school, and he just worked so hard. He was big with Tewksbury State Hospital. They were always fighting, trying to cut the budget, and he was usually at war with them, and he always got the money put back. The thing that over the years that I noticed was he was so articulate about his campaign. I mean, people wanted to help and make donations, and he was fanatic for making sure everything was legit, checks. He was just wasn't going to get caught up in any of the normal stuff that goes on with politicians. He was so straight. It was unbelievable.
He never said he was proud of this, I'm going to mention, but he should have been, and he probably was. About 15 years ago, the town of Tewksbury was going through a severe financial problem. And part of the solution that was worked out by town managers, selectmen, school committee, finance committee, required some special legislation. So we went to Jim and asked him to take care of it, which he did, no problem. And then, for some still unknown reason, the governor vetoed that particular bill. And that was a big problem, because now that it's late in the fiscal year, the budget's unbalanced, and we're not sure what to do. But Jim knew what to do. He went to the House and the Senate and got them to override the governor's veto. I've been involved for about 40 years, and I had not heard of something like that happening. Now, as I said, I didn't hear Jim say anything about that in a way of being proud of it or being something unusual. He just went and did it, but it really saved the town a lot of problems.
So we've been asking, Jay, I'm sorry, Jay, did you get a chance to answer that? I don't think you did. Or no, you did, yes you did. All right, so we've been asking some rather deep questions. Let's add a little bit of levity here. Please, we're going to ask each one of you to share a funny story about Jim. Liv, you got the mic. You were the last one. Musical mic.
It's a Warren funny story. Warren would call Jim on his birthday every March 25th, and he would say, hey Jim, just wanted to call, wish you a happy birthday. And Jim was a little dumbfounded. Geez, Warren, how do you know that? And, oh, that's fine, I just wanted to call and wish you a happy birthday. Then the next year, Warren would call him again and wish him a happy birthday. Geez, Warren, how do you always remember my birthday? Thank you so much. The third year, he called, and Warren let the cat out of the bag. He said, it's my father's birthday. So I remember you because of your father. So Jim just got a big tickle out of that. So, but anyway, a belated happy birthday, Jim.
Well, what was funny between us is he always, I used to drive him around a lot. He would make a lot of calls, and we would work through the car. He would be calling OnStar to make phone calls, and I remember him getting mad because it wouldn't hear him, or the numbers were always screw up, and he kind of went off on that. It was kind of funny. But he always said, I'd get to the house, let's go. I said, well, where do we need to go? Well, Lady Clinic. What time do you have to be there? 5 minutes? Oh, yeah, let's go. I chased down 93 so often it wasn't funny anymore, but thankfully there was no tickets. But I love that Cadillac. We had a good time together in the car, and he was just such a good man. Like I said, he loved to stretch me. He loved to stretch his people. See what he could get away with, and we let him, because it was just so much fun.
When he was the selectman, this was before anything was on television, they'd have the meetings, and then they'd go to the Hardin Tavern, which is a place in Wilmington. It was just a building, the town manager lived there, and then they'd go over everything they had just talked at. Had discussed at the meetings, and then be a few drinks, and by 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, they were ready for fistfights. But overall, they did a good job, and we've been lucky in our town this year. Athens looks great, and he's one of the main reasons that things are the way they are.
Hopefully we've passed the statute of limits on the open meeting laws.
In the past year, Maureen and I were talking one time about funny stories about Jim, and I actually made a list of them. When this forum came up, I pulled out the list and looked and realized many of them I can't tell. In fact, I probably can't. I knew when we made the list that a lot of them would have to wait until Jim passed away. But when I look back, I realize a lot of them have to wait until I pass away. But be that as it may, I did come up with one that shows Jim's commitment and involvement with the state hospital. About 25 years ago, I saw a posting for an opening at the state hospital that I was interested in. So I applied for the opening, and later I mentioned it to Jim, and Jim said, just make a copy of the posting and send it to me, which I did. And then a couple of months later, I got a call from the hospital and told to come in for an interview with the assistant superintendent for finance, whose name I won't mention, but I had never heard of him. I didn't know him at all. So at the appropriate time, I went up there, went into the interview, and the first question he asked me was, tell me why you think you're qualified for this job. Not that it makes any difference.
Did anybody want to add anything else? Does it wonderful? On a similar vein, can you recall any of Jim's favorite stories that if he was here tonight, he'd want to tell us?
Jim never forgot a thing. I mean, it didn't matter if it happened 60 years ago, 40 years ago, 20 years ago. He remembered everything. I mean, he loved to tell me the stories about how his father came to Wilmington and built a house. I think he came from Somerville?
North End.
No, the North End. That, of course, Italian, excuse me. He used to tell me stories about that, too. He just loved to tell the stories. He was going to write a book. I don't know if he ever got a chance. No, I think he said he wrote about 100 pages or so, and I'd love to see that, too. But he loved talking about past elections, past glories, the stories about when he first started running with my late husband and several other guys. They would go out for, I think they hit every street in Wilmington and Tewksbury to campaign. There was no stopping him. He just loved how he started the insurance company, his success in that. I mean, he brought his success from the insurance company into politics. He just had the personal touch, and he knew how to connect with people. Favorite stories, again, I loved sitting with him at the State House. There was some long nights during the budget week, and he had no problems getting me to sit in the members' lounge, even though I wasn't a member. We just sat there and we talked, and we just enjoyed the waiting period between roll calls and stuff like that. He just enjoyed relating his stories. He loved talking about his grandchildren. He loved their accomplishments, the colleges they attended, and how proud he was of them. And, going to the football games in Philadelphia, the Army-Navy games. He so looked forward to that. I mean, I could talk hours, the things that he enjoyed. He just enjoyed life. He just enjoyed being people, and he just enjoyed his family. He enjoyed life.
Any favorite stories that Jim would want to tell, that you're aware of if he was here tonight?
I don't have any, but he would be on the telephone with Warren, and those two would be giggling and laughing and telling stories that Warren didn't even repeat them back to me. They were mad stories, and I understood that, and I didn't listen. I went about doing my own business around the house. But they would talk for a good hour, and they were having a great time. It was a time for both of them to release whatever was bothering them, and they could talk and joke and be real people. But, and Jay was part of this group too, right?
I was the young one.
He was the young one. But they did it. And talking about getting late calls at night, Warren did. get a few late calls at night, not many, but he loved it. When Jim would call him at night, he had a question, he had to get answered right away. Everything was right away for Jim. And it was just wonderful seeing these three guys talking to each other without wondering if they were being judged, and they weren't.
I think one of the things that probably bothered Jim a little bit was in helping everyone. There were so many people that he helped, you know, like you get a call, my son had a problem here, and can you help him? He's going to court. And he helped so many people along those lines, you know, just for minor things. And someone applying for a job, can you put in a good word for me? And then you'd always help these people, and then there'd be certain few that next time he was running for office, they'd be endorsing the person against him. And you couldn't understand that, nor can I understand that. But overall, he was unbeatable. He was unbeatable, and many people tried to beat him, and they just couldn't beat him. He was that good, and I think there was more support in Tewksbury amongst the town officials than there was in Wilmington. Some of them weren't endowed with them in Wilmington, but it didn't matter. He had the people, and that's all that counted. He didn't need any politicians or anything. He just did his own thing and communicated with the people.
I don't have a story right now about Jim, but I do have a story about the extra effort he was willing to put in on behalf of the town, and it involves this building. When we first applied, not me, but people who were working on the issue, first applied for the state aid, we didn't get it. So we had to go through the process again the following year. And this meant a lot of extra work for several people who were directly involved with it. That included Liz's husband, Warren, who was treasurer collector at the time. My wife, Maureen, was here, who was chairman of the library trustees and the library building committee. But especially involved Jim, who spent 2 years of effort going through that application process twice and making the political effort in Boston to make sure that we didn't get shut out again. I don't mean to imply too strongly that the process was kind of political in the distribution of the money, but I thought it was at the time. He made sure that political or not, we got taken care of the second time around. And without that effort, we certainly would not have a library that's 25 years old now, 23. It would have been at least delayed, if not the project being totally abandoned. And that's another example of tremendous effort he would put in to get things for the town.
I know. You guys are very good with that microphone, passing it around. So let me ask you, Margaret, and we'll pass this along. I don't know if we've kind of covered this territory a bit, but did Jim have any signature sayings, at least as you recognize, between you and he, or signature sayings between him and his constituents, or any inside jokes?
Not. Again, it was a boss-staff relationship. I mean, signature saying he was a good man doing a good job. I mean, he loved that slogan. The other one was, call me, just call me, no matter what, just call me, was what he said to everybody. And to me, he said, we're late. And I would say, what else is new? So just kept on going and did what we needed to do.
On Jim's political flyers or letters or anything, he always had a good man doing a good job. And that was so true. That was him. Did he have any inside jokes? Not to me. Jay and Warren, they had inside jokes that they could only tell to each other. And that's how special the three of them were. And usually I'm kind of nosy a little bit, but I kind of butted out because it was so important that those three could have this special connection between them.
He was also very tough to work for, very demanding, and his assistant there probably won't admit it, but boy, he was tough, but he wanted things done, and he fought like you can't believe. He was the best, really was.
This is something Jim said to me and to Warren more than once, and he convinced me of it. And this is it. When someone throws doo-doo at you, I think he said doo-doo.
We've got a 7-second delay. You can say whatever you want.
When someone throws doo-doo at you, some of it always sticks. So you always have to throw some back at him to discourage him from doing it again. Those are words to live by.
Yes.
As a boss, Jim was tough, but he didn't ask us to do anything more than he was more than willing to do for himself. And it didn't, as long as we were truthful with him, if we lied, he could see right through us, but as long as we were truthful, he worked with us and it went just fine. But again, he was demanding, that's because he was demanding of himself.
Speaking of a good man doing a good job, by the way, is there any chance, is Rick O'Neill in the audience? Jim once told me that that phrase was coined by Rick O'Neill, who's a gentleman here in Tewksbury, and there was a campaign rally, and Rick was giving the introduction for Jim to speak, and he said, "This is a great man doing a great job." And Jim liked it so much. He asked if he could use it, but modesty insisted he changed it to good man doing a good job. All right. How will you remember Jim? And how do you think Wilmington and Tewksbury residents should remember Jim?
As in any long-term relationships, we had our ups and downs. There were times, there were harder times, but I'll always remember him as a very generous, very patient boss. Again, he was so good, and I was very honored to be part of his staff and part of his, and to be called him a friend. And I believe he called me a friend too. I hope Wilmington and Tewksbury will remember Jim as someone who made life better for his constituents, whom he considered them his extended family. I remember that one time that Lowell's son called him an old-fashioned lunch bucket Democrat. Well, it's not any picture of Democrats nowadays, but he was a good man doing a good job, and I was very proud to have known him.
Oh, how we'll remember Jim. We all have our own thoughts on that. But I found he devoted his life to public service. Not self-service, public service. And he made a huge difference. He was a full-time representative, 24 hours a day. His ability to produce results was immense. He was like a tiger in the jungle, going after whatever needed to be accomplished. And I will never forget him for that. And I hope his constituents, Tewksbury and Wilmington, will always remember Jim as the person who came through.
One thing I know he was very proud of was for years and years, I don't know in the last few years, but he always had the best attendance of any representative in the state. And he used to say to me, hey, I've only missed this meeting or a couple of meetings. He was way ahead of everyone as far as attendance, because you know how this goes. You go to work today, you don't. And his attendance was the one thing that he was proudest of. That he always showed up and did his job.
Jay, to bring up the date on that, within the last year of his life, he had an opponent who criticized his attendance. He asked me to do some research on it, and I don't know how he stood with respect to everyone else, but his attendance in that time period was well over 90%, so it hadn't fallen off very much. But as for me, first, the way I remember him personally is as a dear, lifelong friend. As a rep, I remember him as a man who was driven by his desire to help people. He just loved being able to do that. As for how the town should remember Jim, no one can be a perfect state rep. It's too tough a job. But Jim Miceli came as close to that standard as we are ever likely to see. And that's how the town should remember him.
So Steve, I'm going to throw you a little bit of a curveball I know we're wrapping up our...
Who says?
Perhaps we could take 10 to 15 minutes of questions from the audience in addition as we finish up with the panel. So,
Actually, very good. I was actually going to do that, but I thought before I do that, all of our panels, well, as a matter of fact, all of our panels have paper in front of them. They've prepared, and we ask very specific questions. So I was going to give you a free-for-all.
Okay.
Why don't you start, Liz?
Okay. I'll start with the first one. I do have two. The Jerry Sellison, who was chairman of the Patriotic Activities Committee, came up with the idea of honoring veterans. We did it for 4 years. He approached Mark Ginsburg, the owner of the Tewksbury Country Club, and he thought it was a great idea, and he offered to foot the bill for everything. Jim was ecstatic that we were doing something for the veterans. He wanted to be so involved in this, and Margaret would probably choke me because I was the one in charge of getting the citations for one dinner dance, wasn't a dance, one dinner, 125 citations for the veterans. And they had to be spelled correctly. And I would give the names to Margaret, and then we would have some other names to add, and so forth and so on. Margaret, I love you. We came through for Jim, and Jim was just so happy. At the event, he stood there, he handed out the citation. He only read one. But he handed out the citations to all the veterans. And it was just such a marvelous event. And Jim was so delighted that he could get up and speak and express his thanks to the veterans for all they did for us. We wouldn't be here, as he'd say to them. We wouldn't be here except for you. And it was just, the veterans would leave, and they were just so happy to have this recognition. And Jim was part and parcel of that. And this went on, we did about 4 of them, and we have another one coming in a couple of years if we can get it put together. So, and we'll honor Jim at that.
all these comments, his family came first. He put as much effort into his family, and he wound up with 3 wonderful children and a lovely wife.
Someday, all of us are going to pass away. And someone looks shocked. But anyway, the best we can hope for is either to die in our sleep or to die doing something we love. And that's what Jim did. He was doing something he loved when he passed away. And as sad as I was to hear of his passing, I was very happy to hear the circumstances. And I'm sure he was too.
I was invited to attend this panel about a month ago, and I was in Florida. I've been there since December, and of course when I got the call, I said I'd be honored to. That was my first thought, to honor Jim. And my second thought was, God, you're still haunting me, come on.
That's perfect. All right, is there anybody in the audience that has a question for our panelists?
I'd like to see.
I was just going to, let's start with the question, yes?
Well, yeah, I have a question. Go ahead.
By all means.
Okay, yes, hi. I was just curious if anybody was interested or comfortable about talking about the higher level political philosophy that Representative Miceli had. I know we heard a lot tonight about what he did for the 2 towns, but also legislating involves statewide issues, sometimes statewide leadership, and tonight was actually the first time I heard he was once Republican. So I was wondering if anybody could speak to any kind of political evolution regarding the party split, whether any particular issue that he was really his signature issues, including maybe the one he was willing to buck the district on. And I say these things coming from the standpoint of somebody who's been involved in politics, and he does have a bit of a reputation for being rather conservative for a Democrat. And I was just wondering if any of you could speak to what his overall philosophy was, where he showed some issue-based leadership, or where that might have come from in his life.
Well, he never met a tax that he liked. I mean, he was very fiscally conservative. Like I said, the Lowell Sun called him a lunch bucket Democrat. That's what they used to be. But he was very pro-life. I mean, and he was also pro-capital punishment. We kept trying to get that bill over and over, but again, it's a very liberal state here. We could only go so far. We introduced it, but it wouldn't go past the committees. Anybody else?
Yeah, I do. One thing he did mention to me was that he admired Tip O'Neill. He was a Democrat, he was a congressman, he was Speaker of the House. And he said, Tip O'Neill says all politics are local. And he followed that, Jim followed that. He would want to talk to all of us because he knew how important it was that he got your opinions, what you're thinking. He didn't try to push things down onto us. He kind of let it, whatever was happening, he's gonna, whatever you want, he's gonna push to get it. And again, as Margaret says, with no taxes. But the other thing I wanted to mention, and I don't think I mentioned it before, he put such a large effort into the senior citizens of our community that it was remarkable. He would come into the, I was allowed to go to the senior citizen dance because one of them was older than I was. So anyway, We'd go to senior citizen dances, and Jim would pop in, and I mean, it was like the homecoming of Jim Miceli. They all wanted to be with him, to talk to him, to share their family, to share whatever was going on in town. And he loved it. He ate it up, so to speak.
I'm fairly comfortable saying that in talking to him as I did over the years, that on the national level, his leanings are with the administration. I feel strongly that's how we felt. I don't want to get into any details, but he knows what's going on, and I think he was pro-administration.
If I could just add on to that, just from my experience, especially when I was new with the newspaper, one time didn't know him all that well yet, and I asked him, I said, I understand you started as a Republican, you switched to a Democrat, and I thought I was asking a sharp question, and I wondered what kind of dancing he was going to do. And he said, yeah, I couldn't get elected as a Republican. That's it. That's the whole explanation. He said, I didn't change any of my views. I didn't change any of my stances, my platform. They just, if they saw an R next to my name, I couldn't get the votes, so I switched. Next question. So he really, and I think you guys have all stated it, but his entire philosophy as a politician, I think, can be summed up into constituency. That's what he focused on. He certainly was aware of all the issues, statewide issues, and he was involved in statewide issues. But if the governor was on the phone on line 1, and some guy from Tewksbury was on the line 2, he'd take line 2 first every time. All right, any other questions? You want to make your comment, by all means.
I have a big voice, so I'll stand up. I wanted to speak to what Liz was saying, is Jim was absolutely important in us getting our new senior center built here. If you all remembered it when you went, it was a tiny little place and a tiny little dance hall. Now we have a dance hall that's beautiful, we have a building that's beautiful. Jim walked hand in hand with Linda Braven and a few other people to make that building beautiful and to make it the way it was. And what do my seniors want? And I was the town nurse for 15 years, and I was invited, and I knew Jim, but he was like, you know, I know he was wonderful, but I had no issues with him. Then all of a sudden I was the nurse, and I was calling the office all the time to speak to either Margaret or the other lady that was there to say, I have this senior who can't buy their food, who can't get their medicines, who are in the donut hole. And I would be getting a phone call 15 or 20 minutes later by Jim in his very busy day to say, okay, this is the way it is. And it was true. When he walked into the senior center, he was like the king of kings. All the ladies could hardly wait to kiss him and hug him. I mean, I said to him, I'm tired of people, Jim, Jim, Jim. I mean, everybody had their hands all over him. And I personally had an issue with Jim that I had insurance, they stopped it for a political reason, and I was without it, and I went to Jim and I said, I don't want to bother you, because don't ever use those words. You're not bothering me. You have a problem? I said, yes, I do. I have no health insurance. He goes, that's a problem. And Jim and I worked together along with Margaret at that time to get it. And then when David came along, and you'd see Jim and David. I said to David one day, I go, how does it feel being Jeff? I think he said, Jeff, how does it get that? He goes, I absolutely love it. And just a couple of months ago, after he was got his place, God bless him, in Jim's footsteps he's following, I said, how are you doing? He said, I'm doing wonderful. I said, glad. He says, Jim whispers in my ear every day. He goes, when I'm doing something and I'm not sure, I stop and I listen, and Jim is whispering in my ear. So he's loved greatly by all of the seniors in Tewksbury. We wouldn't have our beautiful center that we have. We wouldn't have the ability for him. He got street lights done for us that nobody else could get done. He was just magnificent for the seniors in Tewksbury.
Thank you for adding that. Thank you. I think I saw, yes.
Yes, hi, I'm Jean Marsh. I've been in Tewksbury almost 60 years, and I worked with Jim many years for pre-766, and got my son to go to nursery school, even though it was in Lawrence, and many other school problems, but he was always there for us, and we were very proud to know him. And even now, I can't vote for, I couldn't vote for him, but even at that, because they divided the town, but he was just following it on everything I needed to find out for them. So he's an amazing guy and took care of things, and budget-wise, every time there was a shortage, I'd call him and he'd fix it. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'd like to give a little feedback to Jim. I'm Jim Copley, Carey Copley's father. I was watching years ago the debate on the budget in the state. And a few reps got up and started complaining about the fire engine that Jim DeSelli got to the town of Wilmington. Well, of course, he got it to the town of Tewksbury in order to take care of the Tewksbury Hospital. And Jim got up to the state floor and he goes, on my grave, I'm going to tell you I never got a fire engine for the town of Wilmington. And he just sat down and he just shut him right up.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I just want to say, all this time I've been thinking, Wilmington has lost a friend. But I know tonight, Tewksbury's lost a friend too. It was a friend to all of us. We're very lucky.
Well said. Yes.
Hi, I didn't know him personally, but as a past president and current member of the Tewksbury Garden Club, he helped us support, do the dedication of the Blue Star Memorial on Town Common. So he didn't just represent us as a politician, he represented the organizations of town, of volunteers, so he definitely was a people person.
Scott.
My name is Scott Conso. I served on the school committee for 15 years in town and worked with Jim on a number of different issues involving the schools, special needs, funding for regular education, the Wynn Middle School, the John Ryan Upper Elementary School, the high school, just anywhere in town we look, the senior center, the police station, the fire station. Jim got us some money to do those things. And, to the points that were made by the panelists, just tenacious, never took no for an answer. So I knew him in that respect, politically in town. And I was 22 when I first got on the school committee, and Jim endorsed me for re-election, which I was shocked and amazed by. And that was a friendship that lasted since, I first met him back in the early 80s. But on a personal level, I think Jay Tighe mentioned, he would call me up and say, Scott, I've got this constituent, she's a single mom, her kid's in trouble, she can't afford an attorney. And it was, where do I need to be? Give me the number, let me call. I don't think people understood how often he did that sort of thing and what a network of people he had that could help constituents. And, it was just understood. She's a single mom, there'll be no bill sent, take care of this. And he never said no to Jim, because Jim would take no for an answer. How many people he helped on that sort of a level, it didn't matter. I was a political science major, and you learn the legislative process of what a state representative does, and there's kind of this little piece about constituent services. When you ask me about the political philosophy of Jim Miceli, it was 99% constituent services and 1% what legislation do I need to pass in order to help my constituency. That's really, at least from my perspective, what it was all about. I'm privileged for the last 12 years to work at the state hospital, and Jim, every budget year, he would be there fighting for us. He would put in a line item in the budget that said they could reduce the number of beds that we had as a way of preventing them from shrinking the hospital or reducing the services that we provide, and provided primarily to the constituents of Tewksbury and Wilmington. We serve the whole Commonwealth, but he would make sure that the state hospital was taking care of. And most recently, I've been off the school committee for many years with a group of friends, and some of them are sitting here. We started a nonprofit to address the opioid epidemic. We got together and said, all these kids are dying, and we're tired, but we don't know what to do. It's such a big problem. How can we handle this? And we realized, a lot of us had healthcare experience. We said, there's a real problem with long-term residential recovery. They go to a detox, they go in an aftercare program for a few weeks, and then they go back home. They start hanging with the same crew, and they're back in the same problems. And we said, we need a residential recovery place, and there needs to be more than throughout the state. And we didn't reach out to Jim. Jim reached out to us. And I was saying to myself, this is not a politically popular topic. This is not something most politicians are going to be beating the path to your door to say, what can I do to help? But for Jim, it was such a passionate issue for him. This wasn't some concept that he was thinking about. This was a daily phone call, or daily phone calls he was getting from constituents. My kid is in trouble. Can you help me get him into a detox? Can you help me? And Jim, he, through his support behind us, 110%. He got us $100,000, which was key to us being able to purchase the property. He said, you know what, that's not enough. I'm going to get you more money. And one of his legacies was, even after he passed away, Dave Robertson and Dave Nagel and Tommy Golden worked to get more money so that we could help more people. And I just can't think of an aspect in Tewksbury Wilmington's lives that Jim didn't try to help in any way he could. And even in some of the most politically unpopular things, he had a very strong moral sense of what was right and what was wrong. And that's what's missing in politics today, is that moral compass. And if Jim decided this was right, he didn't give a darn who was opposed to it. He would fight tooth and nail, and he wouldn't quit until he got it done. And I'm just forever grateful to Jim. For me personally, his legacy will not only be to all the children through the educational system in our town that have gone through, but for all the lives of the children he's going to save by virtue of helping us get this started and helping these people with substance use disorder. So I just wanted to say, Steve,
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Paul Goodell. I've known Jim since 1975, actually. He's the second person. I met in Wilmington, and I guess my very good friend is Margaret Wilson, back and forth phone calls. And he kind of like pushed me. He was my mentor. You know, I had all these crazy ideas. You could do this. And he always says, you're pigeonholed, you never think big. Yeah, and I said, big to you is like the Grand Canyon, big to me is like normal. So he says, we go to Bentley College and put on the biggest youth basketball tournament, 2,000 people show up. And people ask, why did you go there? He's behind the scenes, you know. So that's how it started. But in 2010, we went to Washington to see the monuments, lose some eye, our Veterans Day, our bus tour together. And they said, we're going to go to Walter Reed and see the most severely injured. We had 37 high-points. And we got there, there was 92 severely injured servicemen. So we came back and we got a call from Ray Allen on Lincoln saying that you inspired the troops, you got to come back. This is October. Columbus Day wants us back at Thanksgiving. They said, Ray Allen, we didn't have enough. So behind the scenes, we raised $6,000 and went back there with 80 high-points. So he said, you're going to get incorporated as 501c3. Yeah. And he's behind the scenes working that. Effective January 1st, 2011, we became a 501c3. I was named the chairman, but de facto, he was Frank Sinatra. He was the chairman of the board. He's the puppet master, and I'm the puppet doer. There was a lot of things for a person to get into Walter Reed. It's a 6-page report, security clearance and everything. We pulled Nancy Cadigan off of his election, and she was doing all our paperwork. So lo and behold, we started things 8 years later, we're down to the program. But I'm here tonight to say, he was a people's person. He never refused a phone call. If you had a problem, if he didn't know how to fix it, he'd tell you, well, this person I know is on the South Shore, can really help you out. Please call him and tell him I said it. So, we really got rolling, and I want to bring this up. Since you're coming to the State House, you're going to put on the veterans. And I said, what? And we got it together. And this is like our signature moment. These are the front page for everybody to see it. I fought with the veterans. So if you know Jim, everything's first class. I said, well, where are we going? He goes, going in the rotunda. The rotunda? The Hall of Flags? He goes, yep, that's where we're going. So we sponsored this event, and as usual, he's the main speaker, and all the representatives are making all kinds of noise, and they're all coming out. And we have 55 veterans came in from the Veterans Administration at Bedford, and we had some from Boston. And we had the honor guard from the Chelmsford Police Department, the East Boston Military Academy over there, and it was like an unbelievable event. I mean, the State House is like overwhelming to pull off an event, which you have to do. So I've been thinking about this since he passed away. So we're going to have an event in his honor in October. We're going back, and I can't think of any better way to honor a man that really helps the veterans. He's unbelievable. It was like 1A, the constituents veterans zone 2. He has taken 175 phone calls from amputees and battered birds, servicemen and women from Walter Reed, from Belleville, Hostel. And he always said, he had in the phone call, he says, if you ever come to Boston, make sure you come and see me. That's how we had the phone call. So we're going to start the beginning of planning stages. It's going to be on a Friday afternoon. I'm trying to get students from Wilmington High, Tewksbury High there. And all of our residents will be there. But we are going back. And I'm going to turn this over to Tewksbury Resident Richard McGaffigan, because he's the MC of it. He can tell you more about accident what happened there. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you for letting me speak. I originally moved to Tewksbury 22 years ago. When I had my first start, I had 2 children. We went through the school system here. First time I met Jim was about a year or 2 after I'd been here. And he said, hey, I don't recognize you. What's your name? I told him what my name was. He said, where did you come from? I said, Bedford. He says, what took you so long? But I'll tell you, he really is just the energizer bunny. I never met anybody. I think I work a pretty hard schedule. I work early mornings, 2 a.m., and I'm in town a lot. And I would go by the steakhouse because that was kind of where I worked in that area. And I popped in on him a couple times just to see if he was really there. He was there. Just unbelievable. But when we started our organization, our mission statement was to really take care of veterans, wounded veterans within Wilmington. And we were really a grassroots program. We didn't know what we were doing. We thought it would be a one-time only thing. And we thought, the government's got to be taking care of them. What do they need us for? And lo and behold, it was one of those things that sort of fell through the cracks. And it was funny that other states, Washington, D.C., New York, places like that, were willing to take us, but we couldn't get in here. And the man we called Jim and said, listen, it's great to go down there, we're willing to do it, but we really want to take care of people in Wilmington. We called him and everything just like clockwork started. It was like everybody knew who we were, and it was really because of him. And I think one of the great legacies of Jim, I hear a lot of people, some of the panelists talking about all the great things that he did in his 40 years as a legislator. I think his legacy is the fact that unfortunately he's gone, but for the next 40 years, the people that he's going to continue to help is even more amazing. I mean, anybody can help somebody when they're here, but to leave that legacy and to have enough people willing to carry that legacy forward, that's a huge compliment to him. So thank you.
You said something that I think was fantastic, by the way, and everyone's given great comments, but this really stuck with me because we've been talking so much about his focus on constituency. And the fact that out of 26,000 people in Wilmington and 41,000 in Tewksbury, I don't have the census up to date, Liz, but roughly, he recognized somebody as not being familiar. That blows me away, but it doesn't surprise me either. So, is there anybody else that'd like to offer comment? Yes.
My name is Miceli, and my dear husband sitting over here, Kelly Green shirt. I want to just take a minute or so and talk about this library and where Jim's place was. When I was on board of library trustees, and the trustees and later the building committee had we were really excited about the fact that we were going to be able to do something. How's this?
Perfect.
Nobody ever said I didn't talk loud enough. Anyway, we were very, very excited about the fact that we would possibly be able to apply for some loans that were coming out relative to libraries. Lots of things were falling into place, but we had one really big problem. We had a plot of land that was down on East Street that was mentioned as a possibility to put the library on, and I just nearly fell over dead when I heard thinking of this particular plot, because if you go by there every day, as I do, you'll see that this part of the year it's flooded. And I didn't think that would be really, really great. Well, as it turned out, that was the day that Jay had picked me up with something, and we were driving along East Street, and I was moaning and groaning about that place, and we can't put the library there, and yada, yada, yada. And Jay, who always gets right to the point where I don't, said, well, what do you want? Where do you want to put it? And right at that particular point, we were at the lights right out here at the Chandler and on Main Street. And he said this to me, where do you want to put it? And I said, right there. And it was this, and the first thing out of Jay's mouth was, then you got to call Jim. And from then on, he was there. You know, we didn't have to call him, but we did. But he would check in with me constantly and other members of the board. And we just owe so much to him in this town for what he did for us. And if you're out in the foyer later, you'll see that there is a plaque there to him and to what he did. Just saying.
Is there anything else? Right over here.
I'm gonna lighten up the, I don't need to lighten up. I'm gonna lighten up the mood. I worked for many years for Jim on his campaigns, either sign holding or at a real estate office, calling people. In fact, it got so continuous that people would say, hi, Dottie, yes, I voted with him. But anyway, there was one time I was in McDonald's down in Wilmington, and I would always go in there for a nice coffee. And I'm pulling around, and I see a Cadillac, and I see David get out, but I didn't see Jim. So I figured David was getting himself a hamburger. So I got my iced coffee, and then I pulled around to talk, figuring I'm talking to David. Well, guess what? Jim was in the car. I couldn't see him. He was sitting very, very low down, eating a hamburger. I don't think he wanted anybody to see what he was eating. I said, what? No, I mean, that to me was one of the funniest things I've seen. He was a good guy, and I miss him a lot. Still off the bait, too.
Very well. Anything else? All right. Well, I think we will start to wrap things up, but I would like to thank everyone actually for sharing such great stories. Thank you for your question, which I thought was appropriate. I'm glad we got a chance to cover that and didn't miss out on that. And my panelists, Margaret Wilson, longtime legislative aide. Liz Carey, longtime friend. Jay Tighe, also longtime friend. Jay Kelly, longtime friend. And thank you again to Tewksbury Telemedia for filming this event. And once again, I want to give credit to Wilmington Memorial Library and the Tewksbury Public Library, who created this in collaboration with each other. I thank you very, very much for attending. I think that Jim somewhere has enjoyed this a great deal. So thank you very much. I'm Stephen Bjork. Thanks again. Good night.